Welcome to, oh, sorry, my mic's not on. There we go. Welcome to the regular planning meeting for East St. Paul. I'll call the meeting to order, the time being 5:30. Can I have the resolution to adopt the agenda as presented?
Be resolved that the agenda be adopted as presented.
Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Posthumous, seconded by Councillor Duval. All those in favor? That's carried. 4.1, regular confirmation of the regular council meeting minutes from February 7th. Can I have the resolution, please?
Be resolved that the council meeting minutes of the February 7th, 2023 regular meeting be approved.
I have a mover, please. Councillor Imhoff, seconded by Councillor Duval. All those in favor? That's carried. And then the confirmation of minutes from the special meeting on February 15th.
Be resolved that the council meeting minutes of the February 15th, 2023 special meeting be approved.
I have a mover, please. Councillor Duval, seconded by Councillor Imhoff. All those in favor? That's carried. We don't have any delegations tonight. 6.1, we have our first public hearing. Of the resolution to open a public hearing for subdivision S22-29824295 Henderson Highway.
Be resolved that council open the public hearing of council for subdivision S22-2982 for 4295 Henderson Highway.
I'll move that. Second, can I have a seconder? Councillor Duval. All those in favor? That's carried, and the public hearing is now open. And we will hear from Mr. Klein.
Read the rule.
We hand them out now.
Oh, we do, okay.
Right. Yeah, so we don't read them, we hand them out. I think everybody has them. Okay.
Madam Mayor, this is an application as 222982. The subject property is located at 4295 Henderson Highway. The applicant wishes to subdivide the lot into 2 lots in the old residential. This is the zoning compliance table. As you can see, the applicant is proposing a lot that is about 3.169 acres, leaving the residual lot of 6 acres. Both the lots meet the area requirements of the RR2 zone. However, they do not meet the site width requirement in the RR2 zone. This is the location map. As you can see, the property fronts Henderson Highway and is right on the edge of East St. Paul and St. Clements. This is the subdivision application map provided by the applicant. The applicant is proposing an access from a proposed Nicholas Street extension. The proposed lot is marked in red right here. This is a general map reflecting the overall area. As you can see, the lot is right on the boundary of East St. Paul and St. Clements. The applicant is proposing an access of extending Nicholas Street. That would go over a drain that is owned by the RMOP St. Paul. The proposed lot is marked in white. Just for council's consideration, there is an opportunity or a potential future Nicholas Street extension that could go all the way to Burton Avenue. As I said before, both the lots meet the zoning requirements, but they do not meet the intent of the policies for the agriculture restricted designation as per the Red River Planning District Development Plan. Red River Planning notes that municipal services should be addressed in a development agreement, and a cross jurisdiction service agreement will be required for the RMOP to implement its applications approved. The applicant will also be required to obtain permits from Manitoba Transportation and Infrastructure. This application was circulated to various provincial agencies and departments. We did not receive any objections on the proposal. If the council wishes to approve this application, the River Planning recommends 7 conditions that are reflecting on the screen and mentioned in section 10 of the report. Thank you. If the council has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I have one question on the first page of the report. Is it a typo or is it correct that it reads the proposed lots do meet the site width requirements? It does meet the site or it does not?
It is a typo. It does not meet the
right. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Posthumous, do you have any questions for the planner this evening?
Not really. It's
Out in that area, I see these are pretty long lots, narrow in the front. I really don't have a question. It's just the single lot split to build another home on for a family, is my understanding.
That is correct.
Councillor Duval,
Yes, can you go back to the satellite picture, which was the first, right? There. As I look at that piece of property, the whole section between Bowen Avenue and the proposed lot and the Henderson Highway, I'm sorry. And Henderson Highway, that block. It looks a lot like a piece of land in St. Clements to the north. Between the proposed lot and that one street that runs, you can see the road that runs through the whole area there. I'm not sure what the name of that is. And look how that was developed.
Like this lot?
Look at the area at St. Clements. Okay, no, don't scroll in too far. You can go all the way up to that road that goes through there, okay? That piece of property, how many acres that is, looks a lot like in bare land, like what's being looked at here down below.
Right.
Okay, now, it would seem logical to me for this property down here to be developed in the same general style as what's above. As I look at, as you look at St. Clements properties around the outside, just around there, they all look like acre and a half or 250 foot frontage, 200 foot frontage, and things like that. Doesn't this proposal here kind of upset the logical pattern of development that property should have? If River Planning look at that at all, Jimmy?
Yes, but like all of these lots are really long and some of them even extend beyond this railway line and go all the way. These lots were a lot wider, if it makes sense. So if all the property owners kind of get together and want to develop it like that, then maybe, but like the current scenario is these are really long, narrow lots.
Yes, of course, but I would suggest, and I don't know for sure, and I don't know if we have any maps of them, but there were such river lots in St. Clements as well. They didn't necessarily stop at the boundary there. And somehow over the years, I guess the neighbors all got together somehow, whatever, and developed what you see there, which makes a lot of sense for a rural residential development.
Yes.
It could have potentially been just a large parcel, right? Unless we look at the history, like where it was designed as an entire subdivision, because it was just one big parcel of land. So we don't really have the history on that one. It's a lot harder definitely to have 8 owners put all their lots together and come up with one big plan. So.
correct, and this is site specific, so we can't compare to the RM behind to the north. They might have different zoning bylaws, different designations, and neighbors could have got together over time and created deeper lots. Unfortunately, we have these long bowling alley lots that were subdivided in history, and now individuals are trying to work with them or subdivide them, make them more useful, or use them still for ag.
Right, so this is the St. Clements now. It's different than what we have in the St. Paul.
Correct.
These are a lot more square and they have longer lots, but that's on this side.
If you look on the left, though, more towards the west, that looks similar more to kind of what would happen with the road through it, right?
Right, so like both these are extendable.
Yeah.
Future, maybe something like this could happen on this side.
Do you have any other questions, Councillor Duval?
I just have concerns that we're not looking forward to how these areas could be developed properly. Instead of chunking out pieces, not adhering to the zoning bylaws that are existing there.
We can address that in, when we have discussion.
Mhm.
Do you have any questions for the planner?
That was it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Imhoff, do you have any questions for the planner?
Not the planner, but I'll probably have some after.
Oh, sure. Okay. I assume the applicant is Bob Keeper. Would you like to come and speak to your application?
Is this one on now? Or?
If it's green, yes,
I can easily answer that question for Councilor Paul.
sure.
I've been here with them on that property. All those acreages back on the St. Clement side. A lot of them previously were river lots as well, but they were purchased by one of the owners who lived there, who was a contractor himself. And he purchased all that land from the owners and he developed that as a one company thing. And that was probably in the late 70s, early 80s, that was started the development back then. So, and also now because of the agriculture restricted zones that have been created, the planning, that area there is not part of that. And it stops at our boundary. They have the ability to still build small lots in those, and those are mostly 2-acre lots. But they still have that ability basically from Lockport South to our boundary, that they can still go into small lots because they've been excluded from the agriculture restricted area in this portion.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so for any of those who know me, I'm a dog with a bone, so I have lots of information here. And basically all my information here that I have is really addressing a lot of the questions that came up or the comments that came up by council and everybody else. So I'm third generation on the property. I grew up here, went to school here, to all the school. And you know, I've seen the community grow around us. And so my children have been raised on the property and I want to continue the family legacy and have them live and raise their families there as well. So originally I held 2 titles on this property. There was a 5-acre lot in the very back where I'm looking at dividing right now. And that was prior to anything being developed north of us. It was its postage stamp size, just in the middle of nowhere. And nobody knew why it was there. It apparently was created in 1942, but nobody knew why. So when we built our house closer up to the highway, we were at the very front lot. We actually just moved that back 5 acres, added on to the front. That's where we are. So 1992, we were granted the subdivision, which consisted of the realignments of the lot lines that we currently have. This included subdividing our family home from the larger portion that we could build our current home. We wanted to put in, we had my grandfather had a nursery back there. So that's why we wanted to build further back off the highway. So my wife and I raised our kids in our family tree nursery, my grandfather's nursery. So we built our house then. The subdivision request before you is to establish a residential building lot for one of our 2 children. Now, people may ask us why we're asking for 3 acres and not 4 in keeping with one of the new agriculture restricted zone recommendations. And the simple answer to that is basically it's mathematics. We have 6 acres between the 2 pieces, basically from the rail line to the east. And if you go all the way to the west to which is Leah Road, the one that one there, that's Leah. That's 6 acres basically on that between those 2. And we have 2 boys that we want to split those 2 eventually for. But we're only asking for the 1 at this point. Again, because it's mathematics, the cost of doing both is pretty prohibitive because we have to put roadways and stuff. So the issue eventually an extension of Leah Road would address other issues not related to this request, such as relinquishing the current. So we have a caveat on our property right now and hold the caveat on the flag lot status. Our current house, its current home would then be accessed by Leah. So in our original building agreement, we had said that at some point if Leah ever opened up across, we would have our driveway from our current house attached to Leah and not Henderson because it created a flag lot. And plus we have a caveat with our original house on Henderson, which my sister lives in, for that the 26 feet. So we would relinquish that caveat back to the front property. We would eliminate the flag lot. And then we'd be able to have our access from Leah, which is actually closer than we are right now. But that's not what we're asking. That's just future sort of thinking. So we're still, so the reason is we're thinking about baby steps here. So I'm abruptly aware that although this request before you today looks simple enough, I know it comes with a bunch of hurdles. So on the 14th of March this year, I had a Zoom meeting with Derek, and Mr. Singh, and we discussed my desire to move ahead with the subdivision request as has been ongoing with several years with planning and the environment. I was asked why I wasn't proposing the 4 lots, or why I wasn't proposing 4 lots with the access from both Nicholas and Leah Road, and I explained both the prohibitive capital cost for ourselves to develop both roadways as well as the interpretation of the land use designation of the development plan. So that was what our conversation was about. I was informed that the development plan for land use restriction articulates should be 4 acres and not must be 4 acres. The 2050 plan was explained to me in general terms, and there was an allotment of finite spaces. You know more about the 2050 plan than I do, so I won't get into the details of that. So I'm going to jump back just a little bit. It's November 2007. Stantec Consulting prepared the Christie Creek drainage plan for the RM in St. Paul. The primary purpose was to deal with drainage problems that with respect to the Christie Creek drain basin, and it's in their executive summary, and I have a copy of it here. Section 4.5 spoke specifically about the land between Henderson Highway, the CMR Railway, Bowen to the north drain, the recommendation to assist with moving excess water to the north boundary drain. So they recommended a street concept plan. And on February 23rd, a road concept plan proposal that was approved by the RM's Planning Council was forwarded, to the committee, was forwarded to the council from CAO Jerome Moz, comprised of detailed road drawings, drainage survey for this area, which I have here. So this was the actual design that came up for planning committee. Here is the drainage plan that came with it. Also had but clearly recognized the concept of connecting Nicholas Road and the from the RM St. Clements with Bowen and East St. Paul. And there was a whole study that came. There's a whole binder of stuff that came with the whole study. All those issues they did, and even with St. Clements, the best basically said that that there was movement for the future there. So that use. That one. So one second, I just need the comment up here. That's why you need this. I just want to talk about the comments real quickly about what was brought up with the report here. So in reference to the land use, the only concern that was brought up basically from all the issues that was brought up by planning was section 4.2.11, which basically states that subject proposal does not comply with this section, agricultural restricted, which is saying doesn't meet the 4 acres, but it doesn't say must. It says should consider. Could generally be at a minimum of 4 acres, not less. Okay, the zoning referred to, and you had brought up earlier about the planning not meeting, that it's not complies with the width. Well, all those, like we had said, they're all the same properties, nothing has changed. And the issue is that just for your reference or to just maybe to remind you. So zoning bylaw 2009 states that it's in compliance and decided it's not in compliance. And very few of these river lots were originally established for do conform or can conform, because they are the old narrow river lots. Nothing can happen. Right? The site is well over the required 2-acre requirement, and I'm not requesting a lot but to be varied, just as well as just being leaving it the same way it is. On August 17th of 2021, there was a subdivision application on Henderson Highway 3949 and 3953. And the subject property has 2 land designations, just like mine does, along Henderson. R residential and AR agriculture restricted, same as ours. In it, it was said the proposed subdivision does not meet development plan policies related to subdivision request. It was in compliance. The 3 lots they were requesting were site width were area were in compliance, site width were not. Manitoba Infrastructure said we object to the subject or the subdivision proposal. Municipality CAO said I do not support it. Fire department is against recommendations. RRP does not recommend, and it was approved. Variation happened on the 22nd of March, and it was approved. The second subdivision just almost the other side of Bowling from us on the 28th. Same thing. Subdivision to create a 1-acre lot that was going to be sold. And it was council asked why not requiring a subdivision to 2 acres to stay within RR2. Family just wanted to keep their garden behind the house, so it was approved to go to a 1 acre in an RR2 zone for the variance. Again, but it was side lot was even less. It was narrow, like it was smaller. It was changed. The zoning was approved. On catch that. The one point that I really am going to kind of hammer home here just a little bit is page 6. If you could bring, oh, you do, okay, the map, you do have it there. Okay. Circulation of comments on page 6 from the acting CAO. Not meet 4 acres. I already brought this up. The 4.2, and it says doesn't mean it doesn't say it has to. It says should generally be considered. Service agreement. Service agreements between areas aren't new, so it's not like we're reinventing something. They already happen in the municipality. Agreements are already in place. We shared boundaries with neighboring RMs for snow removal and road repairs. I do understand that's on roads that exist already. But understandably, those are, say, existing roads specifically identified when addressing the next comments. I want to say that the Director of Infrastructure, cross-jurisdictional provisions of service would establish a precedent for these lands. I know in truth this can be considered for ours, but if you look at the planning map, this area is unique in the fact that there are 3 current title properties between Henderson and Raleigh, all the way to Raleigh. These are the only sections in the whole RM that are bounded or have boundaries with another RM that do not have a road on. Anywhere else in the municipality of St. Paul, the boundaries are lined with roads. We are the only section in the municipality that doesn't have a road. So the brown area, which is those are 5 acre, that's all just still agriculture land, and there's no access. The section that we're looking at for our property is the only section that has no roadway between it, but has 2 accessible roads coming from St. Clement. Now, that drain originally was called Coronation Drain. I was there actually, when they built it. I was a flagman on the road when I was 14, I think. Coronation, it's 66 feet wide, that whole drain. It was originally looked at when I was a kid, and all my old neighbors saying they were talking about extending Coronation right to Henderson. But that's just the history. The RM boundary continues along this line east of Coronation Road, which is the north boundary of the arm of East St. Paul and south boundary of St. Clements. So if you look on Coronation Road itself, which is in line with the same thing, there's housing on the north side of Coronation Road, which is in the RM of St. Clements. And their services obtained from Coronation Road, which is in the RM of East St. Paul. So that's shared service agreement. The rest of the RM is bounded by, bordered by accessible roadways and shared with adjoining RM. So there's, again, we're a little different. We don't have that shared road, but there are shared services. That's nothing new. The operations manager had stated the RM could not accommodate curbside collection, waste, snow removal. We understand that. But the fire department comments that saying with statement, the fact that St. Clements is willing to provide snow removal and garbage pickup. So this sort of addresses that concern. Obviously, there's been talk with them already, and they've made some comments about the possibility of doing garbage pickup for one house. But again, I know that's a service agreement issue. I'm not, you know, that's not sort of the fight. But it does show their willingness from the St. Clement side to be part of this. There is the fire department themselves were the only ones that had, as emergency services, had a comment to say that their only issue was that St. Clement's Fire Department is very close to us. But there is also a mutual aid support in the municipality. Not saying that they would be first to respond right now, anyhow, if we're out there, but there is a mutual agreements already. So again, nothing I think that is a real huge hurdle that we have to overcome. So the other issue that I just want to kind of talk about a little bit is sort of a comment that was made. It's brought up a couple of times here by the operations manager. I think it comes from Manitoba Infrastructure. But I want to make a point that this is, why I'm bringing this up is because it's in there, but it really, in my opinion, has nothing to do with our subdivision. So the drain was developed in the 70s by the RM who installed the access boundary drain on the RM's line. Historically, we had joint farm roads with neighboring landowners, which was access from our driveway. Majority of these still are there. The river lots had one dirt road that bordered on everybody's property, and everybody crossed the rail line to do all the farming in the back. Where the drain is right now was one of our mutual farm roads with our neighbors. That was all agriculture field right there. At the time when the house was built, then my counsel at the time, Mr. Andy Koshlan, and the read was Don Melnick, they accepted my continued use of what was the joint farm access road that became the drain. Instead of carrying out establishment mature trees and bush, which was and is limited in our area, it was agreement of convenience. And as I kept this portion maintained on my own, cutting the grass, pouring the winter and gravel, or the snow and graveling it, which turned supported ease of access from the RM. Originally, development agreement stipulates that once access from the east to Leah, that would become more access points or relinquish the caveat portion back to the front property. That's really identified. It's just a financial liability for me at this time. We've always known that moving our driveway is enough, because there's in there the comment was that we should probably move our driveway back to a section where we're going to plow through the bush too. But it was out of convenience, we always were using that. So the current boundary drain, the issue that I want to identify was the current boundary drain access approach at Henderson Highway is the property of the RM, was installed by the RM during the original construction. This was undertaken during the time when Mr. Phil Rebeck was a reed and things were done differently around here. I doubt that prior to this request, the current operations manager knew that it was installed without a permit. Because the issue is that the Manitoba Infrastructure and going to operations and saying that drain access has to be removed. It means, yeah, I just moved my driveway over to my driveway where it's existing, where I share it with my sister. Manitoba Highways indicates that has no objection to the subdivision, but requests removal of the drain approach at PR 2204. This is the RM's property and access point for maintenance. It has no bearing on the property a mile away. According to operations, this is going to happen regardless. independent of the subdivision request. They've said that's coming out. Even if I was to say we're not gonna do this, they've already told the RM, get the access off the highway. So this inhibits the RM's access to the drain. How will the RM gain access to boundary drain for maintenance? The RM won't have access from our approach, as it's going to be developed through a tree line under our hydro lines, and telephone lines going to the house to the front, and the hydro lines and the bush line that nothing other than a pickup truck's going to get. So their large equipment won't be able to get down the drain. Crossing the rail line at some point where there's no crossing, well, there's rail cars parked there right now. They can't get across, it happens quite often. And they come in there 3-4 times a year with their equipment. In the spring, they dig the ditch, they get the snow out, they cut the ditch and cut all the bulrushes in the fall. And they're just a general maintenance. The rail lines fall under federal transportation laws and prohibit equipment from crossing. If there's no crossing, as such, required temporary crossings installed and removed upon every single use and require a railway inspector when they're doing it. The only viable access would be from creating a road crossing at boundary drain or, at Nicholas, part of the subdivision request. My little comment now is yours, well, because of that's where they're stuck, maybe they want to help me with building the drain cross. MB Infrastructure has already informed the operations to remove the highway access regardless of it. Which then is the RM traveling through the RM of St. Clements to service land in East St. Paul. That will be your only way to get it. So hopefully you can see the reason of my question and comment might be readily accessible for effective municipal service delivery. Comment by the Director of Infrastructure. The RM will need a viable option to access the boundary drain to support effective service delivery of their own lands. And this would alleviate the issue by having this road crossing. But the removal of the boundary drain access at Henderson Highway has absolutely nothing to do with my request of this subdivision. My request was to identify the fact that the RM never removed the drain access as required by Manitoba Infrastructure upon the completion of the construction of the drain in the settlement. Conservation of climate. I know they've made the request. It always states about, I've asked Julie Froze, I've already sent that email to her, spoke to her on the phone about the our septic field that we got with our home, because they say any time you have to do it in that area, they want you to decommission it. So I've asked her to look into about grandfathering ours. The reason being is that when we built it and had it engineered way oversized. I think it's 150 yards or 137. We were 35-40% larger. Never have ever had an issue with it. And the fact is that even their own act that asked her says any transfer of the land or subdivision, but they don't enforce the transfer of the land. I asked her, so it's a transfer of land when you buy and sell. She goes, yeah, but we don't enforce it. So they pick and choose the two. So that's why I've asked. But that's separate. I know it's different, but I just want to let you know that I have spoken with them about the whole decommissioning issue. I'm waiting for a response. So really it comes down to is when it comes down to everything in here. I mean, when it comes to building plans and everything, I agree with that. I know this is not simple, Karen, and I've talked lots about it. And even though it looks simple, it's not always as simple as it looks. But when it comes down to the decision-making options that you have, you know better than me, but the fact is that you can approve this with or without conditions. And some of the conditions that are in here, this is specifically what I wanted to sort of speak about. So the drainage plan, unless it's part of the building plan, this was identified in previous examples of subdivisions where when you guys were speaking of the drainage plans for those two subdivisions that I originally spoke about. And I remember I was watching it online and Charles, you had brought up, is there a necessity for the drainage plan to be part of the subdivision request or should it be? And you guys, instead of the time, it just makes more sense that you build a house as part of your construction piece of your house, not waiting to have this approved because we're waiting for a drainage plan for the area. And in a sense, there is an overall drainage survey that was done by the municipality for all that acreage. The development agreement on page 13 on here, the removal of the driveway. This again has no direct bearing on the request of the subdivision. It has nothing to do with the subdivision request and feel it shouldn't be in there. We always knew that we were going to redevelop our driveway, and that's not the concern. And go and cut down the swath of trees in the bush. But it has no connection with the access to the property almost a mile away. My hope is that by approving this subdivision, it will literally pave the way forward to the future to reconnect or connect me a road where my current home access will be, as noted in my caveat agreement, which would rectify these issues. Again, that's not part of today's request, but the overall plan, I guess, in the future. I've always had a good relationship with the operations managers. I feel that mutual agreeable workaround can be decided apart from the development agreement tied to this request. The removal of the drain access, which is also placed in here. The RM bylaw even states applicants mean owner of the property or persons authorized by the owner. Owners mean a person whose name is on the property and legally registered. I'm not the owner or the title holder or the applicant of the drain access, nor did I install it 50 years ago. This was installed by and is owned by the RM. I do not have the legal color of right to the RM property and therefore do not have the right or ability to obtain permits, construct, remove that which is not mine. And as such, any permit or removal of the drain access at Henderson should not be part of my conditional approval, as I have no legal control over it. Currently, the land is not being used as potential. Extensions of existing roadways at St. Clements that border the current RM of East St. Paul land were already identified by past planning committees, as well as they developed a concept plan and drainage survey identifying future right of ways. The future's here now. My application and SAM report already identifies and allocates the necessary space for land dedication for a future road development that aligns with those concept plans. It is aligned with the established objectives of the River Development Plan, which states to provide a rural lifestyle on lots that are not not immediately planned to be serviced with piped water and sewer. To ensure the rural residential development takes place in an orderly and economical manner. I've been a resident here for over 60 years and would like to continue this family legacy as my family grows. I want to support the future growth of our community and believe that this is my way of encouraging it. I'm asking that you support this subdivision request and the conditional approval redactions that I've mentioned are not being put in. The other thing that I just wanted to comment real quickly on is that there was a comment in here from compatibility in surrounding areas. And it does identify how this is compatible with the existing lots in the surrounding areas, the proposed lines with the intent with the policies, transportation connection, proposed lines with the intent of development. But the one comment that was brought in here was that the extension of both Leah Avenue, Nicholas, southbound towards Bowen should be talked about for local improvements in the future. And I think by at least allowing us to start moving with our family on our property, I am more than willing to be the person to speak with our neighbors, which I have over the course of the last decade. Most of them are getting aged. A lot of them have children that are older than mine. And a lot of them in that section feel like we've just been sort of left out. We're just farmland there, so there's nothing really for the municipality to do. But a lot of the families who are there have been there longer than my family. And they would love to do something with their properties because they're not, other than really Gary on the corner, there's really nobody farming anything. So the issue is that if, aside from this, I agree, we should be talking about a local improvement in cooperation with the landlords. And I'm the person who would more than like happily, and I've already, even since this, notified them of this, they've again asked me, where are we? Could we do this? So in the future conversations, I think that was something we could talk. Thank you.
Thank you. Council, do we have any questions for Mr. Keever tonight? Councillor Emhoff, do you have a question?
Excuse me. Not necessarily a question, just sort of an observation or whatever. The road allowance of the 66 feet, the extension of Nicholas.
Yes.
So I see that it's a possible problem down the road with, because now you have 0.86 of an acre on that side of the road when that allowance goes through there. And I noticed that the plan that you sent around.
Yeah.
Has them, it looks to me like it has it neatly sort of joined together with the property owned by somebody else underneath. So this isn't a world beater. It's just something that I'm saying.
We've discussed that at length, like even when that first came out, and the fact is that was a proposal, right? They actually have, there's another one in here that has about 1,000 lots, which is just absolutely ridiculous, right? And these were to try and stay within the 2 acre RR2 zoning bylaw at the time. But that was also at the time when we were still allowed septics. So, I mean, we're going back pre Red River, right? So knowing that there's probably in the future with the 2050 plan, I don't know the details of it, is that whole area going to get rezoned smaller because of no septic tanks and holding? I don't know. But in that plan, it was about none of us who live there can purchase all the land from each other, which happened in St. Clement. But the idea would be that if those roads or when those roads go through, yes, if those lots aren't big enough, that small piece, and that's all still on one title, even though it's three, it was proposed as 3 pieces. The reason we did it that way was because it already identifies that 66 foot for the easement agreement or whatever would be needed for the road allowance, which makes it as the drawing 3 parcels. It still would be under one title. Yes, could we build something on there and that size, other than we've talked about as we age, maybe the old, granny suite or something, but the idea was if it all the lots down the road, then there would have to be someone purchasing, combining to build them wide. So that's understandable because that is that one small section on the rail line, but we are aware of that.
Thanks.
Councillor Duval, do you have a question? No. Okay, thank you very much. Carrie, do you have a question?
I have something to add in regards to the conditions. So I do suggest keeping the conditions in place because it says such as but not limited to, right? So they can be altered. They're not, it's not exactly saying, for example, the removal of the driveway. Well, I do know that we will be having to apply for the permit and that MI will be waiving the fee for us. And then I think that needs to be negotiated and discussed with the applicant. If we are removing it, who's gonna, maybe we will have a little bit of a joint venture there where maybe we'll remove part of it, but it's not saying he absolutely has to do everything. It's just something that has to be dealt with. So we need it as a condition because it has to be dealt with. And then the details on it can be dealt with in the development agreement. And I mean, nowadays he can also appeal the development agreement if he doesn't like the condition we put in.
If I could just add to that, just to clarify that, the moving of the driveway, we access right now from the drain access. That's how we've been accessing it right now, because it was out of convenience. I have legal access from the driveway right next to it on the south, which is joint with my original home, my original family. It was out of convenience. We didn't plow down the bush. We didn't plow down, all that stuff just to make a driveway. We were just allowed, yeah, it's there, the dirt road's there. We gravelled it, reduced it to get to the back. That's not an issue. That's if for us to move it. The concern was because in MIT, they were saying the removal of the access to the highway, which is the culvert and the drain. That's what they're saying must be, regardless of if we go through this or not. And if I said today, oh, we're backing out of it, MIT has already said you will remove that access to the north boundary drain. So you won't have access to it. That's the drain piece that they've mentioned.
And that is problematic. We've indicated to MIT that we would like to keep that in order to access the drain, and they said no. We'll figure that out.
Yeah, but my only question on that, why I wanted that piece, because in there at one point they were saying they wanted the developer, which I was assuming they were saying me, for me to remove the access to your drain, which that's why I was saying, I don't have color right to it. Because your property was put in and was never, it was, when it was put in and that was built in the 70s, they never had the right permits or the permits to leave it in there. And it was just one of those, don't say nothing and just let's continue on. And because we've made this request, MIT's gone and done surveys and look and go, what the hell is this doing here? That's why it's brought it up. And they're saying, oh, I'm using it. And the way they wrote it, they wanted me to remove the culvert and the drain access. I'm not overly concerned about the driveway. If we can come to agreement that I know at some point, talking with operations, they're saying they may want to do some more work in there to widen it, rocks and stuff. And that's, I mean, that's your property, it's fine, but if they allow me to continue using it, cutting through our trees. But again, their equipment isn't going to fit under our that house, like that hydro lines and the telephone lines that go from the pole lines down that edge over to the house. So that is, and I'm bringing it up just because that is going to be an issue that I don't think has really been looked at. That's why I'm saying that if by supporting this, you will have a roadway, although you're going to have to drive in, say, commits to come back around, but there will be access. Obviously, future access, if through an agreement with all the landowners, we end up building all the way to Bowen, that alleviates that altogether. But that's not going to happen tomorrow or next year or whatever, right? So my only reason I brought that up was I want to make it very clear that that piece of leaving your access to your drain should not be tied to this because it has nothing, and I have no control.
Thank you very much, Mr. John.
Just to add, I would recommend not to take that condition out as well, because if that conversation happens with the province, all we need is an email from the province saying, we no longer need this and we can check this off, but we can't put it back on if it is required.
Yes.
So if this conversation happens at a later date, then we can check that off.
And I think the RM wants to be collaborative with development agreements.
Yes.
So if the application was approved tonight, then you would be engaged by the RM and go through a process of developing that development agreement. And things can land on the development agreement or can be removed. And that's all based on further research and due diligence.
So the other question I was going to bring up, and I sent you Kara an email, but probably.
So Mr. Keever, I'm going to ask that we move forward now.
Okay.
We usually don't have the applicant ask us questions, so.
No, it was more about the variance.
Okay.
Because at one of the other meetings you brought up, why can't we do the variance at the same time as proving it?
Oh, yes,
Right.
yes, yes.
And that was, I was watching that when I was just.
Sure, the Burton.
I had sent that to ask, is that something that could be done? So,
Okay, so Karen, do you want to address that question?
Yes, so he had asked me yesterday if that could be done, and I said, well, at this point, it can't be done. You have to apply for it. As for the planning act, it had to be advertised in the property for 2 weeks, so we definitely can't do that tonight.
Okay. Thank you.
You can apply for as soon as, like, tomorrow.
That's okay.
Okay.
Great. Okay, next we have Mitchell Keever. Does Mitchell want to come and speak?
Hi, my name is Mitchell. I would be living on the back property there. Like my dad said, I've lived in East St. Paul my whole life. I would love the opportunity to continue living there and stay around and own the family there. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mitchell? No. Brooklyn Litke? Yeah, just in support.
It should be at the half.
Oh, thank you. And Brett Shotiel? Is that correct how I said that? Close. Okay, would you like to speak to the application? Just in support? Thank you. And Vivian Keever, would you like to speak to the application? Okay, thank you. Okay, we don't have anybody in opposition. We do have, for information, in chambers, we have Tracy Lee. Would you like to speak to the application, or would you like to change your information to in support or in opposition? You're good for information? Okay, thank you. And then online, we have Louise Chernick. Do we have our online information individual signed in?
Or no reply.
Okay, and David Watchko? I just don't have an address for Mr. Watchko. Does he want to speak to the application or is he just for information remaining?
I've asked everyone actually.
Okay, so they're all just remaining for information. Okay, thank you. Okay. And I guess we will close the public hearing of the resolution.
Be resolved that council close the public hearing of council for subdivision S 22-2982 for 4295 Henderson Ave.
I have a mover, please. Councillor Posthumous, seconded by Councillor Imhoff. All those in favor? That's carried. Public hearing is now closed. And we'll open the floor for discussion. Councillor Duval.
Yes, Mr. Planner, if you could put up the satellite,
Your microphone on.
put up the screen of the satellite picture. Back out a little bit. All right, that's good. That's good. Now, again, I compare to what we see in St. Clements. And when we look at, I don't have dimensions in front of me, but if you extend Nicholas Avenue straight down parallel to the railway line, like it's probably could be proposed, the lots between Nicholas and the rail line, of course, are narrow because those river lots are narrow, but you can see some of them are double lots. Right, just like that. Now, wouldn't it be an orderly development if those lots in there between your blue line and the rail line be the 2 acre or the 1.5 acre lots, whatever they are, similarly in St. Clements all the way down? Now, yes, there's different owners all the way down, but for a planning perspective, that would seem to make sense. That would mean that land between that blue line and the railway is then very useful for building lots. The way it is now with the narrow lots, it is not. Now, again, there's a hurdle of ownership, sure, but I would have to think every one of your owners down that line, almost everyone would be agreeable to whatever arrangement can be made to combine these narrow lots into double lots, like a couple of them are, so that we can see residents built just like we see in St. Clements against the backing up against that rail line. Now, also what I'm afraid of is if this proposal is allowed and they're 111 feet wide, I guess these river lots, and yes, they're taking 3 acres to meet the 2 acre requirement, but it's narrow and long. What's going to stop the next neighbor or next neighbors going down the line south from doing the same thing? Are we setting a precedence? They can say, well, my lot's 110 feet wide. I'm only going to take 2 acres, so I'll go back whatever distance that takes. And then we have kind of a repeat development in that regard, narrow and long with septic tanks. I would say the next, if this goes through, that idea will come forward again by neighboring properties immediately. Because as the applicant said, there's people don't have much use for that land back there. So extending the road through, I think everyone would agree with that. But the width of those properties should be in the order of double the river lot widths that they are now. Thank you.
I think the issue that, I think that would be a secondary plan if there's no secondary plan for this area. So that would be, that would work if there was a secondary plan. I think it's challenging to get neighbors together to do subdivisions and to amalgamate land. So I think if that was a secondary plan, it would be quite a challenge for the area. It is the zoning. I'm not one to go against zoning for the simple fact that this was just zoned in 2020, so part of the development plan. Is it 2020?
Yeah.
Pardon me?
Designated
Designated.
2019.
And when we have areas that are residential or you have areas that are ag, when you start mixing them, if you're not planning them in the beginning correctly, then down the line, as Brian's indicating, it becomes a mixed bag and then can look in error. So it's something to really take consideration to how this will look in the future. And I think that's what Brian's trying to get at. So he doesn't want to see a mixed max of subdivisions going. He'd like it to be more uniformed. The only thing challenging is these long lots are hard to uniform. Any other comments?
Yeah, I see you got 11 owners there. I think Mr. Key was saying there's what's 3 titles on his. I don't know if there's multiple titles on the other ones, for them all to get together. But this Nicholas Road, I guess, is being called, that's something not being addressed in this subdivision. That's something at a later. So as he was stating, if he talked to all his neighbors and now a bunch of them joined together to make, bigger lots that. And I don't even know if 2 acre, I'm guessing you can do septic fields. I'm not sure what it is now, or if it has to be 3. Those would be addressed at that time. But that's not what's in this subdivision. As far as I'm understanding, that's a possible future road.
So I should mention, I did speak to the applicant after he received the comments, and he is going to engage all of his neighbors to the south. Say he gets approved, he's going to engage all his neighbors to the south and see if they're interested in doing an LID where the road is opened at such time, so then he can come back with a road opening and open the road, allowing everyone to subdivide. Also, I should mention, I was approved from my department for funding for a concept plan for the area. So we are going to have, where the future roads will be going and kind of more of a layout plan, which you guys can adopt.
There is a concept.
Well, I've got funding, so I'm going to be reaching out to someone to, create the concept plan. So then it will be like, this is where the road will be laid out. But so when someone comes along and say, here you go. Something that you will approve, that will be a year down the line.
And the subdivision as presented today, if approved, does that hinder your plan in the future for the area?
No, because Nicholas will be extended no matter what. So at this point, this subdivision is being extended to the end of the lot, but he's hoping to extend it further. So that's just a bonus.
Which was the intent of planning.
Yes.
Councilor Imhoff, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nope.
Okay. Is council prepared to deal with the application tonight or your
Fine with it. Yeah. But we do have a sort of a concept plan that the applicant handed around. I mean, it's old, but it
Yeah,
is a
it's
concept.
not
plan.
officially approved.
I understand that, but it's a concept plan nonetheless. Okay, and just maybe what's future coming may be very similar to what that is. Okay. So.
Just to add, the development plan does take precedent over all the other plans. So if the policies are ag restricted, then that is gonna be overlaying on the zoning bylaw or the secondary plan.
Say,
correct? Yeah. Councillor Duval, did you say that you're not prepared to deal with the application tonight?
Well, again, to your point, Matt, Mayor Devlin, would approving this proposal as subdivision tonight have any effect on the future concept plan that you're planning to do?
I mean, Nicholas needs to be extended to Bowen. Like that, we want to extend it,
Would
so.
your concept plan that you're looking for, would it include a street plan, or is it just simply running the Nicholas all the way to Bourne?
It's gonna be a street plan, but I mean, running Nicholas to Bowen is part of the street network, so there may be streets going east-west also, but that's not going to affect this at this point, because the east-west street wouldn't be on the first lot anyway. It'd be somewhere more in the middle.
Middle.
No, of course. I just feel that if this is approved, the next neighbor is going to want to do the same thing, and that will affect the concept plan.
I think with the variations of lot sizes, just from visual, I assume Mr. Keever's lot is the minimal width of the majority. Yeah,
It looks, yeah, besides the one right below him, they're one of the
Even smaller.
narrow lots.
111 feet, if I
right, yes.
The big line.
And rural Route 2, RR2 is the zoning bylaw is 150, is it not?
Also, just to add, if the RM wants to dedicate this portion here, like a 66-foot parcel that is shown in the SAM, they can do that now. So it ensures future road extension of Nicholas Drive. We can add that as a condition of approval.
Well, that's easy.
And then if in future any further subdivision comes, we can do that for all the lots. That we would have a road down.
Consistency.
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Councillor Duval?
I just strongly suspect any concept plan, including the one that was passed around here, and anyone that comes up in the future would not allow this subdivision as proposed.
I should mention, I also will require an update to the development plan at some point. So St. Clements has a condition in the development plan that certain laws in certain areas are permitted to have 2 acres, even though the designation suggests 4 acres. So I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be done and nothing can happen super quickly. Like this will most likely be updated after Plan 2050 and all that, and it'll be probably 5 years down the line, so.
Does, Mr. Planner, do you have any knowledge as to why the designation was ag and not considered to be any form of residential?
For my knowledge, but the policy that Kara was talking about is the infill policy, that's right on the screen. This exempts certain properties that are within these 4 rows in St. Clements. So even though the policy is 4 acres, but there's an exemption for St. Clements. Maybe we can do that for East St. Paul in future, like Karen was saying. And then by that, we will have scoring policies, even for these long narrow lots.
Councillor Imhoff, are you prepared to deal with the application this evening?
I think so. Yes.
I'm fine with dealing with it. Can we go to the map again? So if you go back to Henderson and go up to St. Clements, right there, all those lots are the long lots. They realize the same thing for that portion. So they're all the narrow lots with access off Henderson. And then this would be the same matching that of exactly of way St. Clements is right now. I like the idea of future Nicholas going through, and they can divide on either side, and then they got access. It's still ag and it has to be up to 4 acres, does it? It's so. I think the Nicholas going through now, they can go on either side. Just the neighbors would have to. On the opposite side by the railroad track would have to talk to each other to get the sufficient size down the road. But I'm fine with this right now.
Council Duval,
This area is zoned RR2, is it not?
Yes.
Okay, so it's 2 acres. So, well, it says radio, fine, and just to confirm what the applicant said, the big piece of land that sort of matches what we're looking at here, mirror image, in St. Clements, was divided into long, narrow lots like we're seeing in East St. Paul there. But someone bought all that property, so
Well, the Henderson ones are still long and narrow.
I know, but the area we're talking about here. There was narrow lots extending from Henderson all the way probably to Rebec or whatever. And there was a solution on that. The solution was somebody with deep pockets, I guess, bought everybody out. So an agreement was made there, and then in went the plan that we look at now. On St. Clements. An orderly development.
just a thought, but I think that this lot could be incorporated in the future in an orderly development, depending on where the house would be situated on the property.
Say
So
that.
in future planning, they could come together and do an order amalgamating land to make the lots wider and then be able to move forward with a more uniformed design in planning. So I think that in the future, it could still become uniformed. Council Duval?
That would be reflected in the future concept plan.
Right, yes.
Yeah, and then when
Yes.
people come forward, that's where, I suggest you should get together with your neighbor and,
Well,
maybe once the roads go through, like say, Nicholas, someone will be inclined to come offer to buy the whole parcel and subdivide off that chunk, right?
Correct. And by the time the home gets built, there could be a new plan coming forward. It doesn't mean that the home will be built tomorrow. I think that the applicant does have the best interest of the RM at heart and obviously of his neighbors. So I think that moving forward, if they all got together, because this is usually the first step for an area to move in the direction of subdivision. Nobody wants to be the first person to come forward. But once they do, then it gets easier. And people then say, oh, well, I think I want to be part of that. Because unfortunately, probably the majority of the people along there haven't been farming this land. And they just have a lot of land that they're maintaining and would love to do something with in the future. Councilor Duval?
well, that's exactly the point. And Kara, I believe you said that the developing of a concept plan is years in the making.
Well, hopefully a year.
Now,
It's the development plan update that would be
this
5 years.
could be setting a precedent, like we mentioned before. And what's to stop before the concept plan is established, the next door neighbor, or perhaps a couple of lots down, doing exactly the same thing as this application?
Well, I haven't seen someone complete a subdivision and register it quicker than a year.
That doesn't mean to say someone isn't going to come forward as soon as you realize what has. been
It'll take them a
allowed.
year and then after they get the subdivision registered in their lot, then they have to get their building permit. So like it'd be 2 years.
But they could go forward with an application.
Yeah, they can go.
They can go forward with a subdivision application that's pretty much identical to this one. In our concept plan, we may not even be in sight yet. And what do we do then? Do we turn that second one down? Approve this one and turn the second one down?
Well, maybe.
It does happen.
It does happen, and it is a very sticky situation for the council of the day to do that.
I think that the RM is, I think council is focused on creating secondary plans to alleviate issues in the future in poor planning. And one hawk subdivisions coming forward and then looking at them later and wondering if we should have thought a little bit more forward. So I think that Kara, our planner's on the right track with creating either secondary plans or concept drawings that this council and previous and council of future can have more insight to the area and how it should look when we're approving subdivisions. So I have faith that in the future, this area will look right. I think this is just one step in that direction. So if council's ready, we will move forward with the resolution, which I think is going to be a long one.
Be it resolved that subdivision S22-2982 for 4995 Henderson, 4595 Henderson Highway be approved subject to the following conditions. Applicant owner submits confirmation in writing from the CAO of the municipality that taxes on the land to be subdivided for the current year plus any arrears have been paid or arrangements satisfactory to the council have been made. Payments of any applicable development fees have been paid. A drainage lot grading plan to be prepared by a qualified engineer to the satisfaction of the municipality and to ensure that the proposed properties do not drain into or impede drainage from neighboring properties. Applicant owner enters into a development agreement with the municipality to establish development conditions such as but not limited to snow clearing, garbage collection, fire and emergency services, removal of driveway in the drainage right of way, future road expansion as per RM standards, building restrictions, a temporary asphalt turning circle with a radius of 10.5 meters at the end of road extension, any other standards deemed necessary by the municipality. Applicant owner provides a written confirmation from the RM of East St. Paul that the municipality has entered into a cross-jurisdictional service agreement with the RM of St. Clements for shared municipal services. Applicant owner obtained a variance to vary the site width requirements from RPD. Applicant owner submits written confirmation to the RPD from Manitoba Hydro and Central Gas Manitoba Inc. that an easement agreement has been entered into with the departments with respect to existing and or future facilities associated with the subdivision, and a plan of easement as required by the Real Property Act has been provided. Applicant owner submits a written confirmation from Environment, Climate and Parks, Environmental Compliance and Enforcement Branch that the requirement listed in the correspondence dated December 22nd, 2022 has been addressed. Applicant owner submits a written confirmation from Manitoba Transportation and Infrastructure that a permit has been obtained for the removal of the access for the drain to R204.
Okay, can I have a mover, please? Councillor Postulus, seconded by Councillor Imhoff.
Can I request a recorded vote, please?
Recorded vote on this one. Okay, call for the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Under bylaws 7.1 zoning bylaw number 2023-03, 2018 Burton Avenue for first reading, please.
Be resolved that bylaw number 2023-03, being a bylaw of the RM of East St. Paul to amend the RM of East St. Paul zoning bylaw 2009-04, be given first reading.
I have a mover, please. Councillor Imhoff, sorry, Councillor Duval, seconded by Councillor Imhoff. All those in favor? And that's carried. Okay, 7.3 road opening bylaw number 2023-05 for first reading. Oh, did I miss the bylaw? Sorry. 7.2 zoning bylaw number 2023-04, 2021 Burton Avenue for first reading.
Be resolved that bylaw number 2023-04, being a bylaw of the Arm of East St. Paul to amend the Arm of East St. Paul zoning bylaw 2009-04, be given first reading.
I'll move that, seconded by Counselor Posthumous. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that's carried. Now 7.3 road opening bylaw number 2023-05 for first reading.
Be resolved that bylaw number 2023-05, being a bylaw of the Arm of East St. Paul for the purpose of opening Fiddler Lane across part of OTM lot 60 and 61 parish of St. Paul, be given first reading.
Can I have a mover, please? Counselor Imhoff, seconded by Counselor Duval. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. 7.4 lot grade bylaw number 2023-06 for first reading.
Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-06, being a bylaw of the Arm of East St. Paul to control and regulate lot grading and drainage patterns on private land, be given first reading.
And then a mover, please. Counselor Duval, seconded by Counselor Imhoff. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? It's carried. Under policy 8.1, abuse policy for resolution, please.
Be resolved that council approves and adopts abuse and molestation policy PER 155 as presented.
Can I get a mover, please? Counselor Posthumous, seconded by Counselor Imhoff. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried. General business under planning, we have 9.11 subdivision S22-2978, 3360 and 3380 Raleigh Street for resolution, please.
Be resolved that subdivision S22-2978 for 3360 and 3380 Raleigh Street be approved subject to the following conditions. Applicant owner submits confirmation in writing from the CAO of the municipality that taxes on the land to be subdivided for the current year, plus any arrears have been paid or arrangements satisfactory to council have been made, and payment of any applicable development fees have been paid.
I'll move that. Can I get a seconder, please? Counselor Posthumous. Any discussions or questions? Hearing nothing, I'll call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Under administration, Manitoba Water Services Board funding request for resolution.
Whereas the Manitoba Water Services Board has indicated the need for a council resolution requesting technical and financial assistance for it to consider a project application. Therefore, be it resolved that the Arm of East St. Paul requires technical and financial assistance from the Manitoba Water Services Board to complete a conceptual study on the provision of regional water and wastewater utility services, including the establishment of an appropriate corporate structure for the delivery of regional utility services.
I'll move that, seconded by Counselor Imhoff. Any discussion? All those in favor? That's carried. Under general 9.3.1, Breweries Collegiate Safe Grad funding request for resolution.
Be it resolved that council approve a $500 grant in support of Rivery's Collegiate Safe Grad event on June 25th or June 27th, rather, 2023.
Can I get a mover, please? Counselor Duval, seconded by Counselor Posthumous. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Mr. Planner. Have a good evening. Under operations 9.4.1 Legion Branch 215 Zone Parade for resolution.
Whereas the Royal Canadian Legion, Branch 215, will host the annual Legion Zone Parade and wreath laying ceremony on Sunday, June 25th, 2023. And whereas Legion 215 is requesting in-kind support for this event in the form of a mobile podium with sound system, seating for 75 guests, and raising and lowering the flag at Memorial Park. Therefore, be it resolved that council approve the request for in-kind support for the annual Legion Zone Parade and wreath laying ceremony at Memorial Park on June 25th, 2023 as follows. Supply, setup, and takedown of mobile podium and sound system. Supply, setup, and takedown of seating for 75 guests, and raise and lower the flag at the cenotaph.
Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Imhoff, second by Councillor Posthumous. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. 9.4.3 Tournament of Aces for resolution.
Be resolved that the East St. Paul Tournament of Aces be declared a community event for the purpose of making an application for the appropriate permits. Therefore, be it further resolved that council waive the rental costs of the banquet hall for the 2023 East St. Paul Tournament of Aces as follows. March 10, 11, and 12, 2023 from 12 p.m. to 2 a.m. and March 18th and 19th, 2023 from 12 p.m. to 2 a.m. The tournament be responsible for completing a rental agreement, which may include coordination and ensuring that insurance, supervision, and security are all in place. The East St. Paul Tournament of Aces allows space for the ongoing recreation programs. The damage deposit for the facility be waived. The East St. Paul Tournament of Aces be responsible for hiring security for the event and use the $1,500 that the arm of East St. Paul donated and held in trust due to the cancellation of the tournament in 2020. These funds will be used towards the ice rentals for the tournament.
Can I get a mover, please? Councillor Duval, seconded by Councillor Imhoff. Any discussion? Call for the question. All those in favor? That's carried. We don't have any business arising from delegations, correspondence for information. We had one in our package, which was a news release, and hopefully the Army St. Paul can take advantage of some grant funding towards infrastructure planning. And I believe we have in camera. So can I have the resolution to move in camera?
Be resolved that council now move in camera as per section 152.3 of the Municipal Act to discuss business development matters, and be it further resolved that all matters discussed while in camera are to remain confidential as per section 83(1)(d) of the Municipal Act.
Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Posthumous, seconded by Councillor Duval. All those in favor? We will move in camera now. Can I get a mover to come out of in camera? Councillor Posthumous, seconded by Councillor Duval. All those in favor? That's carried. We have one resolution coming out of in camera this evening. Can I have that resolution read, please?
Be resolved that council now moves out of camera and resumes the regular meeting of council.
Oh, sorry. I was ahead of you. Can I have a mover, please? Councillor Imhoff, seconded by Councillor Duval. All those in favor? That's carried. And the resolution from in camera.
Be resolved that the Arm of East St. Paul accept the offer to purchase as presented by the Province of Manitoba Land Acquisition Department of $34,000 for the 1.7 acre section of land identified as PTRL 114 and RL 115 abandoned CPR, plan number 79, Winnipeg Land Titles Office.
I'll move that, seconded by Councillor Imhoff. All those in favor? That's carried. Now resolution to adjourn.
Be resolved that the meeting be adjourned, the time being 7:20 p.m.
Have a mover, please. Councillor Posthumous, seconded by Councillor Duval. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you.